What if I told you that reality might not be real? That what you see, touch, and believe to be solid could just be a projection of your own mind? It sounds impossible, even crazy, until you discover the work of a man who claimed to prove it, and then mysteriously vanished without a trace. His name was Jacobo Grinberg, a Mexican neuroscientist who dared to ask the most dangerous question in science: can the human mind alter reality itself? In today's video, we're diving into the forbidden truth about how Jacobo Grinberg believed consciousness shapes the very fabric of existence, and why his ideas may have been too revolutionary for the world to handle. Before you scroll away, listen closely, because what you're about to hear might just change how you understand your own life, your thoughts, and the world around you. Jacobo wasn't a mystic in the jungle or a self-help guru selling dreams. He was a respected researcher, trained in experimental psychology, connected to the National Autonomous University of Mexico, studying the brain with real scientific tools. Yet somewhere along his journey, science wasn't enough. He started finding things that didn't fit in any textbook. In his labs, he observed strange patterns, people's brainwaves synchronizing across distances, subjects sensing information they couldn't logically know. At first, it seemed like coincidence, but as the data piled up, one haunting idea began to take shape. Maybe consciousness isn't trapped inside the skull at all. Maybe it's part of a greater unified field that connects everything. Grinberg called it the synergic field, a living lattice of energy that holds every thought, emotion, and possibility. According to him, your brain doesn't create reality, it filters it. What you experience as the world is just your personal version of that vast field. And here's where it gets truly mind-bending. If you can change your internal filter, your beliefs, your focus, your consciousness, you can alter the external reality that appears before you. That was his forbidden discovery. The bridge between science and mysticism, between mind and matter, but not everyone wanted to hear it. His findings were ridiculed, institutions pulled away. Yet he pressed on, blending neuroscience with ancient shamanic wisdom from Mexico's indigenous traditions. He worked closely with shamans, documenting psychic phenomena, telepathic experiments, even rituals that seemed to defy physical explanation. And then, on December 8, 1994, Jacobo Grinberg disappeared. No struggle, no clear evidence. One of the most brilliant scientific minds of Latin America, gone. Some say he left voluntarily, escaping the growing pressure from the academic world. Others whisper darker theories, that he was silenced because he got too close to the truth. What if his disappearance wasn't an accident? What if he discovered something that could actually shift the boundaries of human perception, and someone didn't want it revealed? In this video, we'll explore what Grinberg really found, how his theories connect with modern science, and whether his work offers a roadmap for altering your own reality. We'll decode his concept of the synthetic field, uncover the clues hidden in his last writings, and look at the mysterious signs that followed after his disappearance. By the end, you'll see that this isn't just the story of a missing scientist. It's the story of how far the human mind can go, and what happens when someone dares to prove that consciousness might be the true creator of the world around us. You'll learn why Jacobo believed that every thought interacts with the universe's hidden web, how meditation and focused awareness could reshape that web, and what his research means for anyone seeking to manifest change in their life. Because maybe, just maybe, altering reality isn't about bending the rules of physics, but awakening the deepest powers of perception that already exist within you. So stay till the very end, because the deeper we go, the more the lines between science and the impossible begin to blur. You'll never look at reality or yourself the same way again. Welcome to Awakened Synchronicity, where we explore the hidden connections between consciousness, science, and the mysteries of the universe. If you're ready to see beyond the surface of what you've been told is real, hit that subscribe button and join our growing community of awakened minds. Because tonight, we're stepping into the forbidden truth, the one Jacobo Grinberg tried to share before he disappeared into the unknown. Before we talk about the possibility of altering reality, we need to talk about the man who dedicated his life to proving it. Jacobo Grinberg Zylbobom. He wasn't a mystic, a magician, or a guru. He was a scientist, a neurophysiologist trained in one of Mexico's most respected universities, who combined hard science with an unshakable curiosity about the mind. From a young age, Jacobo was obsessed with one question: what is consciousness really? Not just the brain firing neurons, but the awareness behind every thought, every perception, every dream. While other scientists focused on behavior and chemistry, Jacobo wanted to understand the invisible layer beneath it all, the source of our experience itself. He began his research in psychology, studying how the brain processes images, emotions, and memory. But the deeper he went, the stranger things became. He noticed patterns that science couldn't explain, moments where human connection seemed to go beyond time and space, stories of people knowing things they couldn't possibly know, experiments where two brains appeared to sync across distances. For most researchers, that would be a dead end. For Jacobo, it was an invitation. He started to wonder, what if the mind isn't something that happens inside us? What if it's part of a much larger field, something shared, something universal? And that's where his work began to move into forbidden territory. You see, modern science is built on a foundation that says reality exists independently of us, that what we see is what's out there. The mind, in this view, is a passive observer, a receiver of signals. But Jacobo didn't buy that. His experiments led him to believe the opposite, that the mind doesn't just observe reality, it creates it. To him, the universe wasn't a fixed structure of matter and energy. It was a living web of consciousness, constantly shaped by perception, thought, and emotion. He proposed something radical, that what we call reality is actually the result of an interaction between two fields. One, the synergic field, a vast network of information that contains everything, every possible event, image or vibration. And two, the neuronal field, the brain's energy pattern, which acts like a filter or translator of that universal field. In simple terms, your brain doesn't create reality. It selects every thought, every belief, every emotion changes the structure of that selection, shifting which version of the world you experience. That means, in theory, by changing your consciousness, you can change the world around you. That single idea, that consciousness can alter reality, is what makes Jacobo Grinberg's work so forbidden. Because if it's true, it doesn't just change science, it changes everything. It means we are not separate from the universe. It means the boundary between you and everything else might be an illusion. And it means that the limits we accept of what's possible, what's real, what's proven, are self-imposed filters within our own perception. Plus, the scientific establishment wanted nothing to do with this. His peers dismissed his findings as mystical or pseudo-scientific. They said he was crossing a line between measurable data and personal belief. But Jacobo didn't stop. He traveled across Mexico, working with indigenous healers, shamans, and spiritual masters, searching for real-world evidence that consciousness could reach beyond the physical. He brought EEG machines into sacred rituals, recording brain activity as healers entered deep trance states. He claimed to find synchronizations between participants as if their minds were tuning into the same frequency. It was fascinating, controversial, and dangerous. Because if his theory was right, it meant that science as we know it was missing its most important piece. Jacobo once said that the mind is like a mirror reflecting infinite possibilities, but most of us only see one reflection and call it the truth. His life's work was to prove that those other reflections are real, that we can access them through awareness, focus, and intention. And maybe that's why his story feels so unsettling, because if our minds can shape the world, then we're no longer victims of circumstance, we're participants in creation itself. And for the scientific world, that's not just controversial, that's forbidden. To understand Jacobo Grinberg's extraordinary theories, we have to go back to where it all began, to his life, his roots, and the mystery that still hangs over his name. Jacobo Grinberg Zylberbaum was born in Mexico City in 1946, into a world filled with post-war optimism and intellectual curiosity. From an early age, he was drawn not to toys or games, but to the mysteries of the human mind. His fascination wasn't casual curiosity, it was personal. His mother, a woman deeply spiritual and intuitive, passed away when Jacobo was just 12. Her death shook him profoundly, but it also awakened in him a strange question that would follow him for life. Where does consciousness go when the body is gone? He decided to dedicate his life to finding out. Jacobo studied psychology at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, one of the most respected academic institutions in Latin America. His early research focused on neurophysiology, how the brain processes information, perception, and thought. He wasn't chasing mysteries then. He was a disciplined scientist, earning recognition for his methodical studies and sharp analytical mind. After completing his doctorate, he continued his training in the United States, studying psychophysiology at the Brain Research Laboratories of the New York University Medical Center. There, surrounded by cutting-edge neuroscience, he learned the language of science: electrodes, neural pathways, brain waves. But even then, something didn't sit right with him. The lab could measure neurons firing, but it couldn't explain the feeling of love, intuition, or the power of belief. Jacobo began to sense that the real frontier of science wasn't in the brain's mechanics, it was in consciousness itself. When he returned to Mexico, he brought that question with him, along with a fierce determination to explore what others ignored. He began blending neuroscience with the mysteries of the human spirit. He founded the Laboratory of Psychophysiology at UNAM, where he began experiments that would change his life and perhaps the way we see reality. It was around this time that he encountered Mexico's indigenous traditions, healers and shamans. These were people who didn't just talk about consciousness, they experienced it in altered states, visions and healing rituals. Jacobo saw in them something science had overlooked: direct, lived contact with another layer of reality. One encounter in particular marked a turning point: his meeting with Pachita, a legendary healer in Mexico City. She was known for performing surgeries using only a knife, guided, she claimed, by the spirit of an ancient Aztec warrior. Jacobo, ever the scientist, decided to observe her work closely. What he witnessed stunned him. Patients seemed to experience genuine healing, and their consciousness under trance or ritual appeared to transcend normal limits. He began to document these phenomena with the same rigor he used in his lab. He connected shamans to EEG machines and monitored brain activity as they entered deep trance states. What he found fascinated him: patterns of coherence and synchronization between healer and patient, as if their brains were communicating in real time. This was the beginning of what would later be called the synergic theory, his attempt to describe a unified field that connects all minds and all matter. But before we get there, we must understand that his journey into this field of forbidden knowledge came at a cost. By the early 1990s, Jacobo was well known in Mexico, respected in scientific circles, yet controversial. Some colleagues admired his courage. Others dismissed him as a mystic disguised as a scientist. But he didn't stop. His passion was unshakable. He continued his experiments, studying telepathy, meditation, and brain synchronization. He claimed to find correlations between distant participants. When one person experienced a stimulus, the other's brain waves reacted, even miles away. To him, it was evidence that consciousness wasn't limited to the body. It flowed through an invisible network, connecting everyone. But then came the event that would turn him into a legend. In December of 1994, Jacobo Grinberg disappeared completely. He was 47 years old, at the peak of his career, with over 50 published papers and books. He had recently married and seemed to be planning new experiments. Then, one day, he simply stopped showing up. His students went to his home, no sign of struggle, no forced entry, no farewell letter. It was as if he had stepped out of one reality and into another. The police investigation led nowhere. His wife gave conflicting statements. Some claimed she was the last to see him alive. Others whispered that Jacobo had been working on something powerful, something that could alter how humanity understands consciousness, and that he might have been silenced. The American scholar later reported on his disappearance, describing it as one of the most puzzling mysteries in modern science. Meanwhile, We Are Mituru, a Latino cultural outlet, chronicled how Grinberg's story had become a mix of fact and legend, with believers convinced that his research uncovered truths too dangerous to be public. Friends said he had been nervous before vanishing, that he felt watched. Others insisted he had predicted his own disappearance, saying that if he could master consciousness fully, he could step beyond space and time. No one knows what really happened. No body was ever found. No bank records, no messages, no trace. Some believe he joined a spiritual retreat and decided to live in anonymity. Others believe his discoveries attracted the wrong kind of attention, maybe even from government or corporate entities who feared the implications of his work. But even after his disappearance, his theories lived on, and that brings us to his most groundbreaking idea, the synthetic or lattice model. Grinberg proposed that beneath the physical world there exists a vast, continuous energy field, an invisible lattice connecting every particle, thought, and event. He called it the synthetic field. This field, he said, contains all possible realities. The brain, through its neural activity, doesn't create experience. It selects from this field the version of reality it can process. Think of it like tuning a radio. The frequencies are all around us, but the station we hear depends on the tuner. The mind is that tuner. When two or more minds synchronize through emotion, meditation, or intention, their neural fields align, allowing shared perception or telepathic exchange. That, Jacobo argued, explains phenomena that science still struggles to account for: telepathy, remote viewing, healing through intention. He found echoes of this theory in shamanic traditions and even in the experiences of those who used ayahuasca, the sacred Amazonian brew. In altered states, people often describe a web of light or energy that connects everything, a direct perception perhaps of the synthetic field itself. Grinberg believed that by quieting the mind, by aligning thought and emotion, a person could reduce distortion in their neural field and access a clearer version of the universal lattice. And in that clarity, reality itself could be reshaped. But such ideas were heresy to mainstream science. The Wikipedia page about him still lists his theories as unverified, his research as controversial. Yet among seekers, shamans, and consciousness researchers, his work continues to inspire. Still, for many, the question remains, why did he vanish right when his theory reached its peak? The We Are Mituru account suggests that Grinberg had been planning to present new data, experiments that might have offered stronger evidence of mind-to-mind connection. But the presentation never happened. Some believe he was silenced to keep that data hidden. Others believe he transcended this reality himself, using the very principles he taught. Whatever the truth, Jacobo Grinberg's story remains one of the strangest intersections between science and mysticism. A man who began with neurons and ended with the cosmos. To this day, his disappearance fuels endless speculation. Was he abducted? Did he retreat into the mountains with shamans? Or did he prove in his final act that consciousness truly has no limits? No one knows. But what we do know is that his ideas, the vision of a universe woven together by mind and perception, have refused to disappear with him. They live on, whispered in labs, explored in ayahuasca circles, and rediscovered by those who sense there's more to reality than meets the eye. And perhaps that's exactly what Jacobo Grinberg wanted. For us to keep asking, what if the world we see is only a shadow of a much larger living consciousness waiting for us to awaken to it? So, if Jacobo Grinberg was right, and the world you experience is not fixed, but filtered through your own consciousness, then a daring question appears. Can you actually alter that filter? Can you shift your inner state so deeply that the reality you live in begins to change around you? According to Grinberg's synchronizing theory, every mind interacts constantly with the vast energetic lattice that underlies all existence. This lattice doesn't just contain information. It holds potential. Everything that could happen already exists there in a kind of infinite blueprint, waiting to be perceived. The brain doesn't invent what you see. It tunes into one version of that field. Change your tuning, and you change the version of reality that appears before you. But how do you change that tuning? Grinberg believed it begins with intention, focus, and awareness, the three pillars of mental discipline. Intention gives direction to consciousness. Focus stabilizes it. Awareness expands it. Together they form the mechanism by which the human mind can shape the energetic patterns it interacts with. When your attention is scattered, your energy field is chaotic. The synchronizing field responds to that chaos with confusion. Opportunities dissolve, events contradict, and inner clarity fades. But when attention becomes coherent, when emotion, thought, and belief align, the lattice begins to reorganize. Your perception sharpens, coincidences multiply, and reality seems to respond. Grinberg compared this to a mirror clearing itself of fog. The field doesn't change its nature. You simply perceive it more accurately. And with clarity, new possibilities become accessible. To train this ability, he often turned to practices rooted in ancient wisdom: meditation, breathing techniques, sensory withdrawal, and altered states of consciousness. Through deep meditation, one can quiet the constant chatter of the analytical mind and access subtler frequencies of awareness. He also studied how ayahuasca, the sacred Amazonian brew, affects consciousness. Participants often described visions of luminous networks, webs of light connecting all living things. For Grinberg, these visions were not hallucinations but glimpses into the underlying lattice itself. The brew temporarily suspends the ordinary filter of the brain, allowing consciousness to perceive the energetic structure of reality directly. However, he warned that such tools were not shortcuts. Psychedelics might open a door, but discipline and integration are what allow someone to stay conscious once inside. Without inner balance, those experiences can dissolve into confusion rather than awakening. In his notes, Grinberg wrote that repetition and belief were keys to altering perception. Not belief in a religious sense, but in the neurological sense. Repeated thought patterns carve pathways in the brain, reinforcing specific neural fields. Over time, the brain's electrical structure adapts, syncing more closely with the version of the synchronizing field that matches those beliefs. This means your convictions literally sculpt your experience. When you constantly affirm limitation, the lattice mirrors that limitation. When you cultivate gratitude, possibility, and awareness, the field reflects those qualities back to you. It's not magic, it's resonance. He linked this to what mystics have always taught: the world is a reflection of your state of consciousness. Change the inner vibration, and the outer mirror shifts accordingly. But Jacobo was also careful. He knew how easily these ideas could be misunderstood. Altering reality, he said, doesn't mean bending physical laws like a magician. It means understanding that perception shapes interpretation, and interpretation shapes interaction. By shifting your awareness, you change how you participate in the unfolding of events. He emphasized that this is inner work, not a quick fix. The goal is not to control life, but to align with the deeper intelligence that already orchestrates it. The danger, he said, lies in ego, in believing one can manipulate the universe for personal gain without transforming internally. That, in his words, only reinforces separation and distortion. Still, if you can purify attention, free it from fear, distraction, and self-importance, the mind becomes a precise instrument of creation. It interacts with the lattice in harmony, and life begins to flow with an uncanny precision. Of course, not everyone agrees. Mainstream science views these claims with skepticism, and rightly so. There are no reproducible experiments proving that consciousness can alter physical reality on demand. Most of Grinberg's studies, though intriguing, lack the rigorous controls modern science demands. Critics argue that what he observed, synchronized brainwaves or shared sensations, could be explained by subtle cues, expectation, or coincidence. The mind is a master storyteller, they say, always weaving patterns out of randomness. There's also a deeper danger, confusing subjective experience with objective change. Feeling that reality has shifted doesn't mean it truly has. Human perception is easily tricked. Meditation can create profound states of unity, but those experiences don't automatically rewrite physical laws. Grinberg himself acknowledged this. He didn't claim that thought alone could move mountains, but that thought could change how we see the mountain, and that new perception could open paths we hadn't noticed before. In that sense, altering reality isn't about defying physics, it's about expanding what's possible within its laws. He also addressed one of the most misunderstood links between consciousness and science, the observer effect in quantum physics. Many spiritual thinkers misuse it to claim that observation literally creates matter. Grinberg approached it more carefully. He saw it as evidence that reality isn't independent of awareness, but he never said consciousness single-handedly manufactures atoms. Instead, he proposed that perception influences the organization of reality, not its raw material. So, even as science doubts his claims, the mystery remains. More recent fields like quantum consciousness and non-local mind studies have begun exploring similar questions. Neuroscientists now talk about brain synchrony, coherence, and shared fields of attention, all concepts Grinberg hinted at decades ago. Some researchers even suggest that consciousness might be a fundamental property of the universe, not an accidental byproduct of matter. That idea, known as panpsychism, echoes Grinberg's vision that awareness is woven into the very fabric of existence. And then there are the shamans, the mystics and the seekers, who still speak of experiencing the synergic field directly. During ayahuasca ceremonies, participants describe feeling the heartbeat of the earth, the thoughts of others, the presence of a greater mind moving through all things. For them, Grinberg's theory isn't abstract, it's lived truth. In that light, his ideas form a bridge between science and spirituality. They suggest that what ancient traditions called spirit, or energy, or the divine, may in fact be the same universal field modern physics seeks to understand. The difference lies only in language and approach. But perhaps the most radical part of Grinberg's message wasn't about telepathy or the lattice at all. It was about personal transformation. He believed that the true forbidden path is not in manipulating the outer world, but in dissolving the illusions that keep us separate from it. To alter reality, you must first alter yourself. To see the unity beneath all forms, you must quiet the noise of judgment, fear, and habit. The lattice responds not to commands, but to coherence, and coherence arises from love, clarity, and awareness. That's why he said the work of consciousness is both the simplest and the hardest thing a human can do. It requires no machines, no rituals, no secret formulas, only presence. Yet presence is the rarest thing in the modern world. When you begin to practice awareness, something subtle happens. The edges of separation blur. You start to sense how thoughts ripple outward, how emotions influence people around you, how coincidences align when you act from inner peace instead of conflict. You begin to participate consciously in creation, not as its controller, but as its collaborator. And in that participation lies freedom. You are no longer just reacting to life, you are shaping it, moment by moment, through the vibration of your consciousness. The outer world becomes a reflection of your inner clarity. Problems turn into mirrors. Obstacles become lessons. The same events take on new meaning because you perceive from a higher field. That, Jacobo Grinberg believed, is how you alter reality, not through domination, but through synchronizing. By tuning your inner field to the harmony of the universal lattice, you bring your personal reality into alignment with the larger design. And in that harmony, the impossible begins to look strangely possible. Jacobo Grinberg's life remains one of mystery and brilliance, a scientist who dared to step beyond the boundaries of measurable reality. His synergic theory proposed something extraordinary, that consciousness and reality are woven from the same field, and that by transforming our awareness, we might reshape the very world we live in. Whether he uncovered a forgotten truth or glimpsed something science has yet to prove, one thing is clear: his work continues to challenge our understanding of what's possible. Perhaps the real secret isn't about controlling reality, but about participating in it with greater consciousness, coherence, and love. We may not yet hold all the answers, but the exploration itself, questioning, observing, awakening, is what brings us closer to truth. Now we invite you to reflect. Have you ever felt reality shift through intention, meditation, or deep awareness? Do you believe consciousness truly interacts with the fabric of existence? Share your experiences, doubts, and visions in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if this journey into Jacobo Grinberg's mind inspired you, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to Awaken Synchronicity for more explorations into consciousness, perception, and the hidden nature of reality. Your awareness is the key. Keep awakening.